What's up, guys? Let's take a look at this game. Our plan is to add one feature to drop down from platforms. Right now I can walk, I can jump, and when I fall I land on a platform, or when I fall a lot I land on the ground. But what we'd love to do is hit down to fall through, just like in a lot of platformer games or other things like Super Smash Brothers. So how could we do that in a way that's simple and it doesn't mess with every other feature, including the ones we add later? Well, right now there's one section for the controls, so I definitely want to add the down thing to there. If I have to track down a million different sources when we're looking for controls later, I'd be annoyed at myself, or the other person would be annoyed at me. I made a comment about moving these out, because if it becomes a big system of controls and cues and delays and buffers, then we don't want to put it inside the guy class. We'd have its own little section, and it would just tell the guy once it's figured it out, hey, you're going to jump this frame. But for now, we can add one more line, and it's not the end of the world. So let's say if key input, and maybe I could have just copy-pasted the previous line, but this is not much typing. I'm going to say K down. I'm not 1000% sure that's the name of the down key, but it looks like a pattern from the other ones. Let's say self.drop. Okay, I know that doesn't exist yet. There is no drop, but we can make one. So let's make the drop with the self implicit. And what can we do? Well, I want to keep it extremely simple. I don't want to worry about, like, we turn off the collision and then turn it back on a couple frames later and we make it animate. I'm just going to say we move down. If we move down enough, we fall through the platform and we go back to normal, just like you would fall if you had gotten there by a jump. So let's just say self.y plus equal 20. Okay, plus because 0, 0 is the top left, and so plus is really down, which feels weird at first, but once we give it a name, we don't have to think about it anymore. We just say drop. And now let's see what happens if we run this. I know it's not the whole thing. I know it has huge problems, but we want to run little bits at a time and see what happens. So first of all, I'm going to walk and jump to make sure I didn't ruin those, and then I'm going to hit down. And that looks okay, right? You drop, you fall. Let's see if we can drop through one layer but land on the next layer. All right, and then let's see if we can hold down and drop through multiple layers. Is that what we want? I don't know, but let's see what happens. Hey, look, it went way too fast and it looked horrible at the bottom because it fell through the floor and then snapped back up. But at least it snapped back up and didn't die. Now, there is a huge problem with this, which is that it works all the time, not just on a platform. So if I'm in the air and I push down, well, every time I push down, it teleports me down 20 pixels. So that's clearly not the end. I can't just say I'm done and turn it in and collect my paycheck. I might do something like we did here. When I ask the guy to jump, I have to check if he's on the ground, because he's not Kirby, he's not Flappy Bird who can just get a puff of extra boost at any time. He's only jumping with his feet on the ground. Now I could do something like that right here, but it's different. Let me show you what I mean. If I'm in the air, I just want to get to the top one because I haven't tested that yet, and I snap down, great, do it again, great, but then it's going through the ground, the real ground, because it doesn't know the difference, right? When I say self.grounded, that includes any platform. And what we set up at the original part was the platforms are the ones we create and the ground. And the ground is treated the same for those other purposes, because when you jump, you can jump regardless of whatever you're standing on. But it's not treated the same for this because, well, I don't want to ever fall through the ground. I don't want to even temporarily fall, like when it just dips down and then snaps back up. That looks silly, even though it works, right? You don't want to turn this in and say, hey, it works, there's no problem. You want to say, come on, can't we make it look nice? And speaking of look nice, I had another idea, which was right now when we fall, you fall in front of the platform, and I kind of imagine that you should fall behind it, you know? Like in my mind, if you're on a platform and you hit down, it looks nicer to me if you fall behind. That seems like, I don't know, let's stop and change that. Just absolutely might be worse. If we try it and we look, we might go, oh, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. But I'd like to change it by changing the order that they get drawn, right? Whenever I have a feature like this, I could, if at a million ifs, like if you're dropping and if you're overlapping with the platform, then we do X, Y, and Z. But instead, I could just flip these. Right now, we draw the guy. Well, we update the guy, which includes a lot of things, after we draw the platforms. But if we do it the other way around, then that might work. I don't know. So when I drop down, I fall behind the platform, and that IMO looks better. It might cause problems in other contexts. It might be sometimes where you're like slightly overlapping and it draws on top of the guy and it looks weird. But maybe that'll uncover some bugs that we didn't know about. I'm going to keep it this way just for now, because especially the tiny change we made does not involve adding new code or anything. So what do you think? Fall through? I don't know. On Super Smash Brothers, it kind of looks like they fall through the middle of the platform, because it's like semi 3D. You can't move 3D, but it looks, you know, you can see an angle. And it kind of looks like they fall through the middle, which looks weird, but it makes sense. So let's take a moment and try to fix this bottom thing. If I'm dipping through the bottom, which, by the way, it looks different now. It looks like you're going so far, you're past the horizon or something. But either way, it looks dumb, right? This isn't a crouch. This isn't like an intelligent mechanic that we put in there. This is a bug. This is like, it's moving when it shouldn't. So we could take the ground out of this platforms list and treat it uniquely, but then we'd have to change this. And I kind of like the collide function as it is, because it could have been a lot worse. And we only want to do one for loop. I don't want to do loops, loops, loops every frame, because it might slow down. So instead, I'm going to add one more and right here, and just say if we're above the ground, like if we're anywhere up, you know, in the air, then we can drop. But if we're on ground level, we don't. Now the annoying part is, like I said, 0, 0 is the top left, so the bottom is not really 0. The bottom is the height of the canvas, but really minus the thickness of the ground, but also maybe minus something for the guy. That's going to be annoying, but let's just do it just to get going, and then we can always change it later, you know. So I'm going to say self.y is less than height minus something. I think height minus 20 is not going to work, because what's our coordinates for the guy? Like when we say x and y for the guy, what does that mean? Does that mean the bottom or the middle or the top? We haven't thought about it, but now it matters, right? If I hit down, it continues to dip. So that must mean the y of the guy is not the bottom of the guy. Or maybe it's just 1 pixel off. Let's try that. You never know. Sometimes you're 1 pixel off. Nope. So let's do, what would be, okay, 20 is the thickness of the ground, and then 35 is the size of the guy. Let's just add those together. I don't think that's necessary, but it would work. And again, let's throw in an extra 1, because sometimes you're 1 off in computer programming. In fact, that's the most common error of all time, is being off by 1 when you do your range or whatever. So, hey, that's good. I'm solid. I'm not dipping through the ground, but we got to check the platforms and make sure we didn't ruin it. It could be that I changed something and now we don't drop ever. Nope, we drop. So that looks all right. It is a little bit chunky and a little bit slow. When you fall through, it kind of feels like it should be more instantaneous, like we just teleport to the bottom, or maybe we should give it a little boost of acceleration, or maybe we should make the platforms thinner. There are a lot of things that could get involved to make this pretty smooth, fast, intuitive, or just, you know, fitting with the other mechanics. But I want to show that it doesn't have to be crazy. Like, what did we add today? 3 lines? And all we got was a nice feature. So you don't have to do exactly this. In fact, there are probably a lot of ways that are better than exactly this. I hate having this long line. You know, whenever they have this gray edge here, that's like the recommended maximum line length. I think it's 80 characters, which is not a hard limit. You can go past it, but it's recommended because screens are wide and heads shouldn't turn and all of that stuff. We could indent these just to make it nice and parallel. But the point is, we only added 3 lines, and then we went and fixed and tested things along the way. Should it drop? Should it move? Should it look a certain way? Should it go after or before certain things? And now we have a feature. It's not perfect. We'll definitely have to change it. We'll definitely have to change other things to work with it. But we're keeping all of those minimal, and that's the way we want to go.